Welcome back for all of our listeners. And if you're new here, hello, I'm Kimberly, your host, and this is The Parent Solution, your one-stop shop for all things educational. Today I have a guest with me. His name is Rob, and I'm super excited to talk with him because he is a wealth of information, particularly when it comes to certain things that not everyone is an expert on. Rob, welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me, Kimberly.
Honored to have you here as a guest. Perhaps for our listeners, you could just kind of clarify a little bit, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, like your background in education, and kind of where you're at sort of in in life right now, perhaps.
Oh, absolutely. So name, Rob Spehar. I also have the Spehar Initiative, which is a podcast of mine, which you will be a guest very soon. I live out in Ontario with my lovely wife and two kids, 9 and 6 years old, both girls. So they have me wrapped around their fingers already. and we homeschool them, and we have been for the last couple of years since the pandemic actually began. We had them in a Montessori school, and we were already thinking about taking them out just because we didn't see the benefits of them being in school. So when the pandemic rolled around, it just kind of, cemented things, made things a lot easier. So we've been homeschooling them for 2 years, and we are seeing the benefits of that. Now we are seeing it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And we do not look back. We have no regrets, and we are certain that we are putting our kids on the right path to success.
I love it. You said that that you had your children in a Montessori school before kind of March of 2020 when the world changed, is kind of how I refer to that sort of cataclysmic event. You had them in Montessori before that, and so that when March rolled around, you kind of you guys were prompted to take them out of school.
Yes, yeah, we had actually just before it all came crashing down there. We had a parent-teacher meeting with one of Kiara. She's our eldest. Her name's Kiara, and our youngest is Mackenzie. Better refer to them by name than by number.
Number one and number two.
So yeah, we were talking to her teacher, and she was just going in depth, about stuff that they were doing inside the classroom, and then there was a comment that she made that really struck a chord more with my wife. Her name is Leah. More with Leah than did with me, and then we had a really big conversation with it after. And she said that there are just some kids who learn faster than others. And now when I look back on that, you kind of, as a parent, you're taken aback because it's like, what are you saying? So you're saying that my child can't learn properly? So we're spending $24,000 a year for you to fail our child is basically what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the catalyst that really, got things going for us to pull them out of school. And seeing how many kids were in that classroom, like the ratio, they had two teachers in there, but the amount of kids that were in there were a lot. There were a lot of children in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that one-on-one time was just not there. We were able to go with a Montessori school. You're able to go in there and observe for about half an hour the environment, what your child does. And we were watching her, and she was doing her work. And yeah, the teacher comes around. She's there for maybe about a minute. He or she is there for about a minute, and that's it. So if there's something that she's not understanding, that teacher can't spend that time with her to explain to her how things work. Instead, she's got to go around to the other kids as well. So that one-on-one time was pretty much non-existent, which really kept her back. And that was a big issue. That's a big issue I feel today in school. The ratio from teachers to children is just seems to be, it's way off, and kids are not getting that one-on-one time, which is imperative, especially at a very young age.
Yeah, for sure. I know that when I was in public school, when I was teaching in public school, one of my personally largest frustrations was the fact that I had a classroom of, at that time it was, I mean, I've been in various classrooms, but um, I'm thinking specifically in public schools. I know that public schools versus Catholic schools and Montessori schools are obviously a little bit more, or they should be a little bit more specialized. But the class sizes of public schools and of Catholic schools range anywhere from like 25 kids, usually 22 minimum kids, to like 30 to 32 kids. So you're looking at, a large group. And when you can take into consideration the fact that all of these children and all of these students are children with different needs, not even like, we're not even taking IEPs or anything like that into account, just being different, and being different because we are all different human beings and learning in different ways. When you take all of that into account, it's really it's very near impossible. And I would like to say that I don't say a lot of things are impossible, but I would like to say that this one is being able to relate to all of those students, and to actually get through to all of those students with the material that's being taught, and to foster a healthy teacher student relationship with each of those students is pretty near impossible. And that's not the teacher's fault in any way. I don't think it's just the way that the system is set up, right? Like, you have 22 to 32 children in a classroom. There's absolutely no way that you as a teacher can be effective as in regards to imparting academics, and in regards to building proper teacher student relationships with them. And I mean, I'm sorry to hear about your experience at Montessori. I don't have much experience with Montessori schools because I've never worked in a Montessori school. But
Mm-hmm.
it does sound as though that was a little bit of an eye opener for you and your family, for sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned that it's not the teacher's fault when it comes to teaching the kids. I somewhat agree with you on that one because yeah, they have to follow a curriculum
Mm-hmm.
and they cannot stop. They have to go. They have to keep moving forward. And in Canadian education system, elementary school, you do not fail. You you pass regardless of whatever grade you get, whatever your knowledge is. You pass and you move on to the next grade until you reach high school. But at that young age, the damage is done. Can I use an analogy here?
Of course, please
Um,
do.
so I call it the brick wall of understanding. So for our listeners out there, so imagine that you have this brick wall, okay, and each brick is a word. Each line of bricks is a grade level from grades 1 through 12. Okay, so in any class, you got like three different types of students. They got the quick learners, you got the average learners, and the slower learners, right?
Yes.
And teachers, they have to move at the pace of the class, and they cannot cover everything, just like I mentioned at the top of this. So even for the quick learners, some material it's not going to be covered. So that would be considered a missing brick in their wall of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So now, when you look at when a child makes a mistake in a classroom, you look at that as a big red X. So when you get your test back, you get the check mark, either you're correct or you're wrong, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
class it's got to move on, and there's not enough time to fix that mistake, right? So that's considered a cracked brick. And now
Right.
you
Yep.
imagine this last one I can relate to quite a bit. Imagine the teacher asks you to stand up in front of the class, read or answer a math question or do some public speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and that child makes a mistake. I can relate to that because I did that. You
Mm-hmm.
cannot you cannot fix that in that moment of time. All the children, other children could be laughing at you. For myself, I was laughed at. That ruins your self confidence,
Mm-hmm.
your self image, and that is going to be a crumbled brick. So when you look at each level, you have your missing bricks, cracked bricks, and crumbled bricks. And because our education system doesn't leave any child behind, they
Mm-hmm.
get pushed up to the next grade level, just like I was saying. And there's going to be more missing bricks, cracked bricks, and crumbled bricks. So as they get older, when you are building on top of this non-solid foundation, what's going to happen to that brick wall when you have the weight and pressure and demands of life pushing down on it?
Well,
It's going to
it's
come
gonna
crumbling
break.
down.
Yeah.
It's going to come crumbling down. So the whole point of that is it's imperative that our kids at a young age get that solid foundation so they can succeed in life. That was
Hmm.
my analogy. I like saying that analogy. I figure it's very relatable to a lot of people today.
I have never heard that analogy before, but I do think it's very relevant. I never thought of it like that. But it's kind of the way that I portray teaching and the value of that, building those skills, not just academically, but building the life skills too. And I know that you're very much a person who is into building those life skills, particularly for yourself and for your family. And I imagine with your homeschooling experience, as a family, that you guys really focus on that.
Yeah, we focus on actually a lot of things. We focus on their emotional health, their intellectual well-being, their physical prosperity, and we want them to learn the life skills as well as the academics, and they're learning to recognize and nourish their emotional health. So my wife, she's really there with them. She's really got that one-on-one time with them, explaining to them things that they are unsure about. If they have an issue with a friend of theirs, playing down the street, there was an argument, she sits down and talks to them and explains to them what's going on. So
Hmm.
they're also learning to prioritize their physical well-being. They're going out and playing, they're being social, and they're also learning to follow their passions and exploring interests as they see fit. Kind of like what Montessori does. They allow their child to find out what they love, which is what
Hmm.
we're doing as well. And they love horses. They love their horseback riding, and they know the terminology down. They're asking me if I'm going to be cantering with this kind of a horse. I'm like, what? I don't even know that.
Yeah,
you know. So they're educating me in a way,
of course.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we love teaching them the life skills, and we're there to guide them and explain to them if there's something that they are unsure about, which is again is very, very key.
Hmm. And I think that's really important. I love that you and your wife as parents have taken that, as a couple and as parents have taken that and have really honed in on what what is best, for your family and best for your girls, and really focused on how to make that happen. I'm sure that it took some life changes to be able to make the switch, from homeschooling, or from Montessori rather, to homeschooling, no?
Oh, absolutely. It's a big change because they're in school, so they're not with you for that whole day. Now all
Hmm.
of a sudden they're with you all day, all night, every single day. So we had to, adjust for that. And I work from home, which is a huge plus. So I can help wherever I can, make the kids breakfast, give time for Leah to get the house ready for their day for learning.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was a bit of an adjustment period, but once we realized how well we were doing, how well they were responding, it just came a lot easier day
Hmm.
after day. And we saw the benefits, we see the change, and yeah, like I said, no regrets, not looking back.
Well, I mean, if you had regrets, you can always look back and say, well, I should have done this or should have done this, right? You can always improve upon things, right? Like I like to say, when you're
Absolutely.
doing something, and like I'm the worst person for this because I hold myself to some pretty high expectations, but when you're doing something, you should give yourself time to figure it out first, right? And give yourself, and with
Absolutely.
with homeschooling, I'd say your first year is all just experimentation, as to what works, what doesn't, figuring out just a routine as well, right? It's fortunate that you're able to work from home so you can be, on deck and on board. I know a lot of parents that are, single parents, or whose partner may work out of the house, and so they have to do it all themselves. And so routines might look different for everybody, but it's developing that routine and finding something that works for you and for your family, right?
Absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. And one, and there's a lot of parents who are hesitant about pulling their child out of school because they don't know if they could do it. Just like when we did, how was that adjustment period? And yeah, as you're moving along, like you said, Kimberly, we are improving. We're if this doesn't work, okay, we'll try this.
Hmm.
For parents who are unsure about homeschooling their child, I want to ask them this question: what does their child's future look like for them? What is their vision of their child's life? And part two to that question is, how would you feel if they don't achieve that? It's I'm not looking for an answer from you, Kimberly, or I just want people to ask themselves that question, because a lot of people they don't think for themselves a lot lately, especially with everything that's been going on the last
Hmm.
couple of years. Don't think for themselves, they don't ask the right questions. So I wanted to pose those questions for parents out there, and if they can comment to you, what their vision is and how they would feel if it's not achieved. That would be awesome. But you know look at it that way. What does your child's future look like right now?
Hmm. Yeah. And and having that, I think the key there is having that ability to ask the right questions, right? Um, and I know that that is a tough skill to master, and it's something that I think it can always really be improved upon. It's not something that you one and done. Like, you're always working towards asking better questions, and asking better questions, and asking proper questions, and questions that are going to give you the right answers, are like, that is something that is crucial to success in life. I have this game, right, that I play with my students a lot, even the younger ones, really. And it's called 20 questions. Now, I'm sure you know what 20 questions is, right? And on a general sort of
I do.
basis. So the idea with 20 questions, the way that I play it, with my students is, okay, so one person has to think of an object, right? Let's say you and I are playing 20 questions. I'm going to think of an object or a thing or something. I'm going to have some sort of finite um thing in my head that I'm thinking of as my subject. You then have 20 questions to try to guess what the object is. You can ask me any question you like, but the answer to the question, I have to be able to say yes or no. It cannot be an open-ended question.
Right.
So this, I find, really forces kids to think. Like, I have had I have had, grade 9, grade 10s, grade 11s, grade 12, all through high school, and even some elementary kids. Like, they get really creative with the questions that they ask, because when you know that the person who's answering you can only say yes or no, you get very specific about what sorts of things you have to ask, which is the whole point of the game, right? Teaching, and they're learning
Yes.
without even realizing that they're learning, right? I'm teaching you how to ask proper and pointed questions to get the answers that you want, right? And sometimes we'll do it the opposite way. Sometimes my student will be the one who has the object in mind, and I have to ask the questions, right? And that trains their brain in a little bit of a different way as to, how do I answer this question? If I'm going to give hints, how do I give hints appropriately? It's very much a thinking game, right? But that's the point, is that in order to ask the right questions, and just on a general basis in life, in order to get the answers that you want, you have to be able to ask the right questions. So I love that you brought that up. I think that's something that's really, really important. Like you said, particularly in today's day and age, when a lot of people are not thinking about things, and I think that's because they're not asking the right sorts of questions.
Exactly. And it's either they don't know what to ask, or they're afraid to ask for
Mm-hmm.
fear of reprisal. And that's what's been happening the last few years. Like, people are afraid to speak up about certain issues because they fear that they're going to be, blacklisted, be the black sheep of their friends or their family and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's a nice segue to something I want to talk about with kids today, and that's like the Soji 123. Um, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who aren't aware of what Soji 123 is, and I have it in front of my screen here. If I can just read a quick snippet of what it's about, Kimberly, you don't
Please,
mind?
please, yes, please do.
Okay, so it's meant to support all students. That's what they say. Soji 123 helps educators make schools inclusive and safe for students of all sexual orientations and gender identities. At a Soji inclusive school, students' gender does not limit their interests and opportunities, and their sexual orientation and how they understand and express their gender are welcomed without discrimination. So that's the whole point of what Soji 123 is. But my question is, why is this being introduced at such a young age? You know, when I was in school, never heard about this ever, ever.
Yep.
This was not even talked about. Now it's daily. You have to talk about it. And if you don't talk about it, you are blacklisted.
Mm-hmm. Or labeled as transphobic or homophobic or whatever else whatever other phobic sort of adjective. And like, listen, I am all for, like, if people want to do them, like, that is fine, 100%. My standpoint, that my question that I am always asking about stuff like this is, why is it in the schools?
Right.
It is what, like, when I was in school, like, I'm only 28, all right? I'm not somebody that's like, from the dark ages, or if people want to be like, oh, well, that was so long ago. It wasn't, though. I'm only 28. I only graduated high school 10 years ago. When I was in school, Rob, I did not even know my teachers' first names. That was just how it worked. Like, I didn't even know my teachers' first names, let alone, like, I cannot even imagine, like, my teacher here, where we are, there were in our province, there were teachers that sent kindergarten students home with masturbation homework, because that is included in the Soji 123 inclusivity sort of curriculum. We want to make everyone feel welcome. We want everyone to be comfortable with their bodies, et cetera, et cetera. That's great. But you have to ask yourself, what sort of damage am I doing by introducing this to kindergartners, to grade 1, to grade 2? And why is that in the school in the first place? Right? Like I said, I didn't even know my teachers' first names, let alone know about anything to do with sexuality or whatever. That should be the parents' prerogative. It should be out of schools. Like, when I was in school, it was the basics of health class. That was it. It was like biology, right? Like, men have these parts, women have these parts. This is how it works, etc. Like, that was it. That was because that's education. Anything else that's being pushed is a narrative, is an agenda. Period. End of story.
No,
That's
I
just my
fully agree with
opinion.
you. No, no, and that's I'm with you on that one too. Like this has no place being in schools. It goes back to my brick wall of understanding. How is this a basis for education? How is this going to set our kids up for success in the future?
Mm-hmm.
When, like, how is it going to be? Are they going to be taught to be future leaders or
Mm-hmm.
future followers? That's what we're trying to do with our kids. We want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that they are future leaders. They have the confidence. They are certain in what they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and we are going to ensure that.
Mm-hmm.
So having this in schools is not beneficial for children. Just a quick story. My wife made some soup the other day. Okay, and she was sitting down having some lunch with Mackenzie, the youngest one. Um, and they were just having a little conversation. I was in the living room, doing some stuff on my computer, probably emailing you. Um, and Mackenzie just pipes up. You know what, mommy? I think I know what the secret ingredient is for this soup. And Leah was like, "What's that?" She's like, "Love." And
That's so cute.
I stopped what I was doing. Me and my wife looked at each other, and it was like, in that moment, like, that was pure innocence. That is our daughter who is not tainted by the system. And we see that the benefits of homeschooling keeps them out of that. And we are doing the right thing. We are certain in making sure that our kids are on that right path. It was that moment that was just like, wow, untainted by the system. That was like in that moment. And I love telling that story because, yes, it's cute because, it's a 6-year-old saying that, but it's just like, that's the pure innocence. And what is happening to our children today with this Soji 123 narrative? It's taking the innocence away.
I think that's an amazing story. I think that is definitely something that resonates with me for sure. I know that children who are young like who are, between the ages of 6 and 11, I would say. At that age, like I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a degree in psychology. I'm not someone who's a social worker. I'm not trained in like behavioral science, et cetera, et cetera. But I do know from my experience with working with children for the past 10, almost 10 years now, that children who are young have this innocence about them, right? They have this sort of purity about them. They've not been tainted by the world yet. And, you can say the system and whatever system you want to say. But one of the reasons that I love teaching so much, and this is exactly why, is because when I'm teaching a student, there is nothing, or teaching students, there is nothing in the world that they care about other than that lesson at that point, right? There's nothing in the world that they want to do other than learn, like at that point, right? Other than learn and enjoy the activities that we're doing and whatever, because they put all of their focus into it, right? So when you have children who are passionate, who are excited, who are like, I have kids who I had a student just this morning who asked me for homework. I had another student this morning who actually told me he created his own homework. He's like, you didn't give me any homework last week, so I made my own homework. Like that is the kind of excitement and passion that you want to see in children. But if you're throwing all sorts of I want to say ulterior ideas at them that their brains literally cannot handle because of their age, it is going to have an effect on them long term. And this is the danger with introducing certain things, like in this particular case we're talking about soju 123. This is the danger of introducing things like this, because you're infiltrating children's minds at such a young age that they cannot tell the difference between themselves versus the other yet. They don't have that ability to tell the difference between themselves and who they are versus who other people are yet. Typically, right? Most kids who are 6 to 11, they're still kind of figuring themselves out. They're figuring out what they want to do and who they want to be and like where they want to go in life and all those sorts of opportunities. If you're throwing gender ideologies at them, and I don't care what else you call it, that's gender ideology, period and end of story. I know in the
Yeah.
States the big thing is critical race theory right now, and that's a whole other ball game. But speaking with
Yeah.
the gender ideology, right, like that should not be in the schools, because it's not the school's business to teach such a thing. If a parent chooses that they want their child to be educated that way, or in that sense at an appropriate age level, or at the appropriate sort of time, and like every family situation is different, right? If a parent decides that that's something that they want to do, then there are many private companies out there that I'm sure would love to put on, that do put on courses and have discussions and meetings, and like it should not be something that's in the public education system. That is my personal and professional opinion, is it is not something that should be in the public education system, because it is not the school's business to be teaching such a thing. And that's a
I
huge reason why I stepped out of the system, because I could not, to me, I could not sacrifice my personal values to have to do that. I just could not. It was not okay with me.
I fully agree with you on that one. And we pulled our kids out before any of this really made itself known to kids and parents and society in general.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about kids at a young age taking things in. I want to talk about the natural learning ability for
Yes.
children. That's from the ages of 0 to 7, and it's something that we all have. So, for example, it's how child naturally learns how to crawl, walk, and talk, right? And it's this ability that allows a child to learn words and other things that are happening around them in their environment. So it's important to recognize that from the time a child is born, they're automatically absorbing everything in their environment, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're touching. It's those first 7 years of a child's life that are the most crucial, just like the brick wall of understanding and having that solid base of education. that's when that child's learning ability is most open.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're inputting these things, like, so what do you 1, 2, 3, into these child's classrooms at such a young age, of course they're going to be taking all this in. They're going to be asking questions. They're going to be wondering different things, and they're going to be going home and asking their parents questions that these parents aren't really able to handle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where change really begins for kids and changing the education system. It starts in the home. It starts with the parents. When the parents can be aware of what their children are learning,
Mm-hmm.
what they're being told to learn, I think that's when things can really change. And parents, don't be afraid to ask the right questions. Speak up. Say, what are you teaching my child? I would like to know.
Mm-hmm.
You are the child's parent. You have every right in the world to ask what your child is being shown.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not okay with it as a parent, then taking the appropriate course of action, whether that's, what if you're able to homeschool, like my opinion is that, homeschooling is a great option, but it's not an option for a lot of people simply because not everyone has that capability to work from home or to be able to structure their lives in that sort of way. So there's a lot of parents who don't have the ability or can't for whatever reason take their kids out of public school at the moment, and I think that's a really big part of being able to work within the system. You have to advocate, you have to make your voice heard, because if you're not going to remove your child from the system completely, you've got to make sure that you are an active participant in your child's education. What is my child learning? And that means getting involved with the teachers. That means getting involved with parent council meetings. That means potentially, talking to the principal. That means it may result in some uncomfortable conversations with the staff at the school, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if you as a parent, and I know as parents, like we care deeply about our kids, as a parent, you should you not want to make every effort that you possibly can to make sure that your child is having the values instilled in them that you would like to have instilled in them?
Absolutely. It goes back to the question I asked earlier on. What does your child's future look like to you?
Yeah.
And if they don't do that, how is it going to make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Really,
And
really look at that question. Really look deep inside yourself to find that answer. Don't just go surface level. No, I want them to get a good job. I want them to retire and blah, blah, blah. No, really look deep within yourself what you want for your child.
mm-hmm. And if you're not happy with the answer, then perhaps it's time to do something about it.
Exactly.
would
Exactly.
be would be my sort of suggestion.
Well, things start with a conversation. Reach out to Kimberly, reach out to myself if you have some questions. You want to learn about something that's foreign to you. I'm sure we've dropped lots of little nuggets here for your listeners to start, asking questions within themselves. Like, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about it.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to either one of us for sure.
Yeah, I'm all for discussions. I call them discussions with a purpose. I like discussions with a purpose.
Yeah,
I'm all for,
yeah,
talking to people and getting new ideas and new ways of being able to either work around things or work through things, or create new systems altogether. That really is where my passion lies, is creating new systems altogether. But I recognize that not everyone has the ability to do that. So being able to work around systems and work within systems or work through systems and give you the tools. And I know you, Rob, are onto that as well, as giving people the tools to be able to uh, help their children in the best way possible and be able to really be involved in their education in the best way possible and in the most effective way possible, really.
absolutely. When a child can communicate to, like, verbally and physically, when they can communicate with others in today's world, that gives them the confidence to realize, hey, I can do anything and they can move forward. And that's what we're seeing with our kids. They were shy at one point, but
Mm-hmm.
now they are to talk and communicate with adults, have a full on conversation about, horse riding, or, they'll ask questions about, how do you start running your own business? What
Mm-hmm.
9-year-old asks that kind of a question? Well, she was 8 actually when she asked that question the first time, because she wanted to build, bracelets and lip gloss from home. And like, what 8-year-old wants to find out about starting a business? Normally, they want to go on TikTok or YouTube, watch the latest video, or go out to a amusement park or something. And here they
Mm-hmm.
are, asking these kind of questions, and it's like, that's awesome, and we are
Mm-hmm.
going to foster that to its fullest extent.
Yeah. And that's really the key, right? Is fostering your child's creativity and fostering your child's desire to learn naturally. Because if you do that, there's really no limits on what your child can achieve. And like I said, as parents, that's what we all want. I think deep down. No, I don't know a single parent that would say that they don't want the absolute best for their child. But you have to look deeper and ask that question as to what is the absolute best for my child. And regardless of, I think, what that journey itself looks like, I think that the answer is going to lie somewhere in the realm of them reaching their full potential and them being a happy and contented and fulfilled human being doing what they are doing, whatever that happens to be.
Exactly. And thinking for themselves.
Yeah, and fulfilled and happy and independent. Somebody that's like that is definitely someone who's a critical thinker and who asks those difficult questions, right? And who's able to, yeah, like you said, think for themselves, and who's able to create a like-minded community to be able to support themselves, right, with a network. So I think that is really important too. Those are my suggestions, right? Everybody is going to have a different sort of answer, but
Mm-hmm.
the point stands that I think that it's very, very important to be involved in your child's education in whatever way that is.
Just like you said, Kimberly, advocate. If you feel you don't have a voice, but advocate to your school board. Or just talk to them, ask the questions. Do we have time for one more quick story?
Of course, go right ahead. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So I found this article online actually. It was about binding workshops. I don't know if have you ever heard of that?
I have not. No.
No.
Do you want to
Okay.
maybe tell me a little bit about
Um,
them?
Absolutely. Um, so this happened back in July. So there was a binding workshop in the Waterloo Region District School Board, and the trustee, her name is Karen Meisner. Um, she's part of a gender affirming project that took place at the Kitchener Public Library. Binding, it's the process by which trans or lesbian women flatten or disguise their breasts.
Ah,
Okay,
okay. Yes, I do
and
know what you're talking about now.
so she was promoting and providing special fittings and accepting donations of pre-loved binders, right? So one thing, there was a trustee. Her name was I'm just trying to find it here. Oh, Carolyn Burjowski. She's actually put a lawsuit against this because she was let go for speaking out against this
Mm-hmm.
from the rest of the Waterloo Region District School Board. And I'm just bringing that up because that's what's happening now. Is even parents are starting to be silenced for speaking up for not just their own children but other children as well.
Mm-hmm.
And when those parents are out of the picture, it's like they have free reign of what they can do with these children.
Mm-hmm.
At this particular get together, they were offering kids a $25 gift card for participating in their research, I guess, so to speak. So I just wanted to bring that up. More people who voice their concern, the more powerful we can be. I like to use the hashtag stronger together.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
But it's
yes, it
true.
starts with one person. Yeah, it is true. Like the more people that we have together, more the better chance we can make those changes.
Yeah, there is definitely strength in numbers. And that is, I think, one of the biggest things that is a problem in today's world is that there are too many people who are being silenced, and that discourages those who would have spoken up, right? Um,
Hmm.
but I think if you have any concerns at all about the future of your children, it doesn't matter how many other people are speaking up or how many other people are not speaking up. You're going to say something because that's not right to you, because it doesn't jive with your morals and with your values and with your ideas of what your child's education or your child's future should look like. So yes, stronger together, but you also have to be okay with standing on your own 2 feet,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. It's not easy. Definitely, it is not easy, but just know that there is support out there for people who
Hmm.
want to speak their mind and make those changes. There are
Oh, a
people
hundred
out there.
percent. 100%. And I think the alternative, I say alternative educational movement, because homeschooling is supposed to be this alternative sort of idea, right? But I think
Hmm.
the alternative homeschooling movement, and the alternative education movement and the pushback against mainstream education, it's a lot, like, speaking as an educator who works in alternative education, it is a lot bigger than people think. And it's simply because the people who are already doing things alternatively are not necessarily going to be loud and proud about it, because they're just doing their thing. They're just happy doing their thing, right? And I think that's why um, people think that it's not as big as it is, right?
Hmm. Yeah, homeschooling year after year, it's increasing. You
Mm-hmm.
see a growth of about 5% a year when it comes to that, and then I get that number from a study that was done by the Fraser Institute between 2006 and 2012. Yeah, it seems a little
Mm-hmm.
bit old, but you are seeing a progressive increase of people beginning to homeschool. And it's more practical and it's more possible now more than ever with the technology, um, the maturation of homeschooling as a legitimate, educational option, alternative option.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of resources and, like I said, support groups and a lot of, everything's available to you. It's all available to
Yeah, the beauty of the digital age. The beauty of the
you.
digital age. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate you being on this podcast with me. I'm definitely looking forward to being on yours. For sure. That's something I'm very excited about. So hopefully we can meet up again. I definitely see more options for a future conversation here.
Absolutely. Kimberly, it was a pleasure. I really appreciate you asking me to come on, and it's great to have these kind of conversations with another like-minded individual who wants to make changes and who can see, the issues that is happening for our children now. And we are
Hmm.
here together to help make things available for parents at home.
Yeah, for resources and for people who need those resources. If any of our listeners here are listening to this podcast and you wanted to know more about Rob or more about myself, you can always find me on social media. It's starstudents.learning on Instagram and Star Students on LinkedIn and Facebook. In the show notes of this podcast, as well as in a partner blog, I will have all of Rob's information. He's a fantastic individual to link up with, and I'm super, super excited that he's in my network. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll be back next week.